and welcome to episode 62 of This Week in Germany. We'll be bringing the world to Germany and Germany to the world with news for the week beginning the 9th of March 2015. My name's Daniel.
And I'm Rob. Each week we bring you stories from the news, society, and culture in the English language. If you want to find out more, including ways to follow us on Twitter, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and now Spotify, head over to our website, thisweekingermany.de.
In this episode, the past year has seen a clear shift to proactive foreign policy. But what is the responsible course of action? Should the German government make its mark on the world or take a back seat? The Wall Street Journal's Anton Troianovski will be joining us to explain.
In our March Film Club, Malachi Ray Rempen reviews the Oscar-winning Das Leben der Anderen, The Lives of Others. It's a film about East Germany's secret police. We'll be finding out what has made it so popular.
For the German of the Week section, we featured the Hasselblad award-winning photographer Wolfgang Tillmans.
Our destination this week is the sleepy yet romantic little town of Monschau.
All that plus the rest of the week's news in brief, coming up.
It was just about a year ago that President Joachim Gauck said that some saw Germany as a shirker in the international community. He said the country was perceived as using its past as a way of avoiding tough diplomatic choices.
The Foreign Minister, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, described the past year as presenting the country with a harsh reality. He said there have recently been unprecedented challenges for German foreign policy.
Germany has recently been directly involved in crisis talks in Ukraine and economic negotiations in Greece. So what has brought the country to get stuck in and push for changes, rather than simply mediate?
To provide us with an insight into Germany's new foreign policy outlook is the Wall Street Journal's Berlin correspondent, Anton Troianovski. So, Anton, could you describe Germany's approach to foreign policy, diplomacy, and military until now?
Well, since the reunification in the early 1990s, Germany has really, in many ways, held back internationally and sought to kind of be in the second row behind, let's say, Paris and London in leading European foreign policy. There's been kind of a continuous attempt, you might say, by German leaders, supported by the German public, to kind of avoid sticking your neck out on tricky political situations. Probably one of the first big shifts came in the run-up to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003, when Germany and then Chancellor Gerhard Schröder kind of led the opposition to, or helped lead the opposition to, the Iraq War. That was kind of one of the first times that Germany post-reunification took a strong stance. But that, too, was driven out of this idea of better not to get involved internationally, better to hold back, better to avoid intervention, certainly military intervention. And you for a long time saw German foreign policy be really driven by economic interests. The idea that Germany can best further democratic values in other parts of the world by increasing, economic interdependence. You've seen that from Russia to Latin America to other parts of the world. And in the last year, and this is, I guess, what we're going to talk about. In the last year, you've really seen some changes on several levels there.
So maybe you could give us a rundown of what changes have happened over the past year.
Well, the biggest and external shock to Germany, obviously, has been the Ukraine crisis. It's just really shocked people that you could have this kind of violent conflict so close to Germany. And it's put an end to the belief among many that international borders can't be altered by force anymore in Europe. So that was the big external shock. But in the background, you had German leaders starting to recognize that Germany, because of its economic primacy in Europe, also has a foreign policy responsibility. And the thing there is that the German economy obviously withstood the Euro crisis far better than any other major European country, and that left Germany in this unprecedented position of economic power in Europe that German leaders started to recognize as also being something that they should translate politically. And so this kind of we've seen sort of a coincidence of different things here. A year ago at the Munich Security Conference, President Joachim Gauck spoke about Germany's need to take on more responsibility. The Foreign Minister, Frank-Walter Steinmeier, has been saying similar things. So you've had this external shock of the Ukraine crisis combined with German recognition, at least in the political elites, of the need to take on more responsibility. That's led to this shift that we're now seeing become more and more concrete.
So there's now the question of how far will or should Germany take this new role? So should they put their mark on the world as the United States has done in its foreign policy? Some have said, should it go as far to try and Europeanize Russia, for example? Should it really put its mark on the world, or should it be more careful? Well, first of all, should and will. What will it do?
Well, I mean, let's first look at what Germany has actually done, what has actually changed amid that background that we just talked about. So the biggest thing I think that Germany has done in the last year is take the central role among Western countries taking on Russia over Ukraine. So that's been something where Germany, I think, recognized, and Chancellor Merkel's government recognized that it had the most potential influence on Russia, and so was willing to kind of stick its neck out there in a way that we haven't really seen Germany do on the international stage much before. Also, though, a part of international responsibility, the way that German leaders have defined it, is the military and security aspect. And there, Germany has been criticized for years by the U.S. and other NATO allies for sort of not pulling its weight militarily and kind of relying on the protective umbrella of the U.S. to guarantee its security. So there, what we're starting to see happen is German politicians talking more seriously than really at any point since reunification about strengthening and even expanding the military. The most direct example of that is probably the fact that in the Cold War, West Germany had 2,125 Leopard 2 battle tanks made for it. The plan, as the military has been shrinking in order to cut costs, was to bring that number of 2,000 down to just 225 tanks. And recently, in late February, Defense Minister Ursula von der Leyen announced that they were going to put a stop to that shrinkage and reevaluate how many tanks they actually needed. So you've seen, this notion of German responsibility carry through certainly into the diplomatic sphere via Russia, but also into the military sphere. And so to get to your question on how far will Germany take this, a big part of this is how much is going to be politically viable, because as you know, the German population is really one of the most pacifist out there. Anything that smacks of military engagement, a rearmament would not go down well with very large swaths of the population. So that's going to be one issue. And the other one is, I think, you constantly hear the Germans say, we want to, if we're going to take a greater role internationally, we want to do it with our European partners, with international partners. So I don't think you can expect Germany to take a U.S.-style kind of a unilateral role in really any international conflicts or crises.
So you mentioned that Germany is an extremely pacifist country. What do Germans think about this new role of more proactive foreign policy?
It's very difficult, and it's a very sensitive topic among German voters. There's been some interesting polling conducted on this. There was one from the Kerber Foundation that asked Germans last year whether they wanted their country to take on greater responsibility in international crises, and a lot of them said, no. In fact, it was 60% that said in 2014 Germany should hold back, and only 37% said Germany should get involved more strongly. And then something even more interesting is that this same poll was conducted earlier this year, and the same question was asked after this year of real German engagement internationally, and that number actually went back even further. You had a slight downtick of Germans who were saying the country should engage itself more strongly. But I think if you present at the same time, if you present Germans with sort of specific facts of a specific situation, they are going to be willing to approve of things. And the most dramatic example of that in the last year has been the delivery of weapons to the Kurds fighting Islamic State in the Middle East. That was an unheard of step for Germany to send weapons into a war zone, one that took a lot of convincing on the part of Merkel's government. But in the end, they did it. In the end, we see Merkel and Steinmeier remain extremely popular in the German public. So it looks like for now, the German public is willing to support this limited, careful expansion of German international engagement. But again, if we see anything unilateral, if we see anything that smacks of warmongering, I think you can expect very strong protests from a large portion of Germans.
Anton, Troianovski, Berlin correspondent for the Wall Street Journal, thank you very much for joining us here on This Week in Germany.
Sure thing. My pleasure.
If you'd like to follow Anton on Twitter, you can find him at AntonWSJ. And now for this week's News in Brief. This past week, Germany has made some exciting changes in the realm of improving representation of women in high positions in the workplace. Some of the biggest companies doing business in Germany must now ensure that 30% of supervisory seats are being occupied by women. There has long been a controversy that it is more difficult for women to reach high levels of power in large companies. The number of men has been historically much greater, and women have not been included organically or via social pressure. The federal government in Germany now believes that it is necessary to create a law to help bring equality to top-level positions, and it will start to break the glass ceiling. Though this is big news in Germany, it is not a new concept to start mandating that women be represented in business boardrooms. Other countries in Europe, like Norway, Spain, France, and Iceland, already have a minimum number of women in top jobs set at 40%. The vote on this bill passed with a clear majority, though some of the Green and Left Party decided to abstain from the vote, believing that it did not go far enough. This law is set to go into effect the beginning of 2016. A story that reaches across the world. 2 German teenagers who were visiting Singapore on a vacation got caught and are now convicted for vandalism. The vandalism performed with spray painting graffiti on a subway car. The pair tried to flee the country when they knew they were going to be punished. They made it to Malaysia, but were caught and extradited back to Singapore. Both the German defendants pled guilty in court, but the prosecution demanded a harsh penalty to set an example and a deterrent for others who may think twice before breaking the law. Their sentencing has been set for 9 months in prison and 3 strikes each with a cane. Graffiti is a serious crime in Singapore. Previous incidents in Singapore involving foreigners for vandalism and citing harsh penalties have been in world news as well, including an American and a Swiss youth who also received caning as a punishment for spray painting. And that's the news in brief. If you'd like a quick and simple way to keep up with the latest from Germany, sign up for our weekly email newsletter, which you can find on our website, thisweekingermany.de.
And now it's time for March's Film Club. So, of course, as usual, I have here Malachi Ray Rempen, the filmmaker. Say hello, Malachi.
Hello, Daniel.
So, what is our Film Club film for this month?
This month we take a look at Das Leben der Anderen, or The Lives of Others, a 2006 film by Florian Henkels von Donnersmarck.
Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck.
Henkel von Donnersmarck. Great German name. Anything von etwas Mark. It's a great German name.
It's a very good name. So, could you give us a quick overview of what the film is about?
It's about a fellow who works for the German secret police.
In East Germany.
In East Germany, back in the 80s, I believe it takes place.
Yes.
Sort of mid-80s. And he's assigned to...
spy on a playwright.
A playwright and his lover. And through the course of the film, sort of he becomes touched by the art and the music that this person actually produces, and sort of has a change of heart by the end, and actually starts protecting him. This person who is essentially in his attic with bugs throughout his entire apartment, sort of listening 24/7 to every conversation.
He becomes involved in the lives of the people that he's monitoring.
That's right.
Yeah, kind of passively through them. And yeah, maybe we could talk about the opening scene with the interrogation, and it kind of gives you an overview. It sets the tone for what the Stasi was like in East Germany.
That's a great scene because it was the first time that in German film history that had ever been portrayed in such an accurate and an honest way. And what it is it took place in the prison of Hohenschönhausen, which I've actually been to, and it's crazy. You should go. And it's it follows the interrogation by this fellow, our main character, of a guy who was trying to flee, or someone he knows was trying to flee the East Germany and go into the West, which was a crime. And in order to find that out, he basically used various interrogation and psychological torture methods, such as sleep deprivation, food deprivation, and just general sort of making people feel small and making them feel trapped. And they were extremely good at this sort of psychological at the psychological kind of torture. And the little details, like things like what they would do is they had you place your hands under your thighs when you were speaking to them with your palms facing down, so that they could collect the sweat that came off of your hands at the end of the interview and put it in jars, so that if they needed to find you, they could just have the dogs sniff this piece of rag and then send them after. I mean, it's just like they went to these insane lengths, and the film shows this very well.
Well, also, there's a sense of paranoia throughout the entire film, and that they have information on everyone, and they're using this information for a specific purpose. Two things which I can think about is the Stasi captain who we follow, Gerd Wiesler. He is teaching up-and-coming, to Stasi recruits. And one of the students says, "Isn't this inhumane to deprive people of sleep?" And he puts a mark next to that person's name.
A little neat German X next to his name.
And then you think, okay, well, that's it. He will not be promoted, or he will not pass, or whatever, just because of that one little comment. He's had a mark next to his name. And then later on, when they bug the apartment of this playwright, the Stasi captain notices that the neighbor has seen what's happened. And so he says to the neighbor, if you say one word of this to the playwright, then your daughter will not get a place at medical school. And all of this time, it's like they are so manipulative, and the entire system is built to oppress people into conforming to this ideal. And then later on, there's also a joke which is made by a younger a person working in the Stasi place and in the Stasi headquarters, and he says a joke about Erich Honecker and the leader of East Germany at the time, and that was not allowed, completely not allowed. And just the sense of paranoia that when there's one of the Stasi captains notices that this person is telling a joke and basically asks for the name and rank of this of the person who told the joke, it basically just makes you think that you can't get away with anything. Absolutely no freedom of thought, and it really depicts this sense of paranoia at the time. And I think that's what's really interesting about the film.
Well, the East Germans, the Stasi, had the most complete surveillance state of all time and of all history. They had everything on everyone. They knew everything. They had bugs in everyone's apartments. They had dossiers the size of file cabinets on every person. They knew every detail about every single person's life, and that was in between the 50s and the 80s. The film won the 2006 Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film.
And it cost only $2 million to make, but made $77 million around the world. So it was a financially successful film as well.
I think this film actually started because that's one of the reasons why this film is so popular. It was the first one to go into this time, the Stasi time, with seriousness. I mean, there had been other films like Goodbye Lenin and Sonnenallee, which were comedies and kind of like looked at it with a sort of lighthearted nature. But this was the first time that it sort of recreated the paranoia, as you said, and just the oppressive psychological fog that hung over everything in East Germany at this time. This is the first time that had been done.
Would you recommend this film?
Thumbs up.
Great. So what is going to be our film club film for next month, the month of April?
Well, in April, we're going to take a look at Der Untergang, about the last few days of Hitler's life in the bunker at the end of World War II. We're going to go see some Nazis.
You know, the most popular films out of Germany, the historical films, tend to really be about Nazis. And it's true, but Der Untergang, I would feel, is a very important film, also in German film history. So yeah, it's well worth watching. So please take a look at that film, Der Untergang, or Downfall in English, and send us your feedback, and we might read it out in the next episode.
If you'd like to see Malachi's film work, just head over to mmrempen.com. And coming up right now is Destination Germany. We're taking you on a journey somewhere in the country that is well worth a visit. Whether you're a tourist or a permanent resident, a foreigner, or a German citizen. Here, we'll be covering the famous sites as well as those little-known corners of Deutschland. All that matters is showing you that Germany is an interesting and exciting place to visit. If you enjoy the destinations that we talk about each week, check out our website, thisweekingermany.de. We'll have photos of each week's destination.
I have to say, if you are a fan of pigs, then last week's destination will be very difficult to beat. We went to a pig museum in Stuttgart, which has over 50,000 exhibits, 27 different pig-themed rooms, and a restaurant. So it is a pretty unique place, and especially if you're a pig fan. But anyway, enough about last week's crazy destination. I want to know what you have chosen to tell us about this week, Rob.
Well, this week we're changing up the pace a little bit, and we're going to a romantic little town, and surprisingly, it doesn't get a lot of attention. Maybe that's just the way the visitors and the people of Monschau like it. And while it used to be an industrial town that focused on textiles, it now bills itself as a health climate resort city and focuses on providing an interesting and relaxing experience for visitors.
Monschau. Sounds a little bit French. Does it have a French origin?
It does, and during the 1700s, it was actually part of France or owned by France. The city is in the very southwest corner of North Rhine-Westphalia, right on the border of Belgium. It's in the Eifel region in western Germany on a low mountain range. Though this area in Germany and Belgium are both German-speaking communities now, it does have French roots.
So what is there to do in this, how did you describe it, a romantic health climate resort city? I hope it can live up to a description like that.
It's a very picturesque, small mountain city with a river running right through the middle of it. It's full of those half-timbered houses that we talked about a few episodes ago. Most of the buildings here have not changed much in 300 years. Windy little narrow streets intersect the city, and many of the streets still have cobblestone, giving the whole place a rustic, old-world Europe feel.
Sounds pretty good. So what is there to do in this town? Is it all bed and breakfast with a little bit of walking to stretch the legs, or is there more to it?
There is a multitude of different types of accommodations, from fancy, expensive hotels to more modest places for frugal travelers. There are bed and breakfast type establishments, as well as a large number of rental apartments that look very comfortable. As for what you can do there are quite a number of different attractions and activities for visitors. Let me go over a few of them just to try and pique your interest. One of the most known museums of the city is called the Red House. It's a beautiful Baroque-style building that's actually two buildings that used to be the home of the town's major cloth maker, which was the former industry there. You can see what life was like in the culture and lifestyle of an 18th century bourgeoisie. There's also a brewery that has brought forgotten beers back to life, a glassworks that teaches as well as informs, and a wonderful castle that often has art and music exhibitions. If you want to relax in a beautiful old mountain town, look into Monschau. And don't forget to check out our website, thisweekingermany.de, for some photos.
Next up, our German of the Week section, where we put the spotlight on a prominent person from this week's news, a German citizen or even a foreigner who we deem an honorary German, who's had an effect, for better or worse, on German culture, society or politics.
Our German of the Week this episode is a fine artist who works in the field of photography. He is not just any photographer, but world-famous German photographer Wolfgang Tillmans. We are featuring him because this past week he won a very prestigious award, the Hasselblad Photography Award. For those that might not know what that is, Hasselblad is a Swedish camera manufacturer known for its excellent quality and dedication to the photography community. When the founders died, they set up an annual award system to be presented to one photographer each year to recognize them for major achievements. This year, that photographer is Wolfgang Tillmans. He's renowned in Germany and the world for his work in the 90s, when he documented the techno and gay scenes. Now, he's more focused on pushing photography's boundaries of space, scale, and format in his photographs. He said in a recent interview that he thinks of photographs not as simple images, but actual objects. This means that what he's producing is not just a printed image, but an object that can be used somewhere to enhance where it's being used. This is not the first artistic prize Tillmans has won for his photography, but it is a major one. The prize awards 110,000 euros. He'll also have an award ceremony at the end of November this year, and starting the next day, he'll have a brand new exhibition opening at the Hasselblad Center in Sweden. And that's the end of episode number 62.
This Week in Germany is produced by me, Daniel Winter. It is written and presented by myself and Rob Bishop.
Our correspondent from Berlin was Wall Street Journal's Anton Troianovski. You can follow him on Twitter at AntonWSJ. Our film expert was Malachi Ray Rempen. Visit him online at mmrempen.com.
If you'd like to subscribe to us in iTunes, get weekly email updates, or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Spreaker, or SoundCloud, all the details are at thisweekingermany.de. We now also have a Spotify playlist of modern German music. You can find the link to that on our website too. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next Monday with more of This Week in Germany.